It is so nice to have a very special guest in studio, and he's really been doing beautiful work. Grayhawk, you go by Grayhawk, right? Is here, and he's been visiting Maui for almost 2 weeks, and you've traveled extensively throughout the world, and I love your last release you put out. You're a wonderful shaman musician, and the voice of the ancestors is the one that I just adore, which is wonderful. And you've had an interesting shaman's journey. I mean, you were really very interested in the vision quest and the Native American soul, and explored that. And that was kind of a life-changing experience for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, so my travels have really brought me to different earth-centered traditions. And living in the Southwest and California, and growing up there, I began a course of studies with the Native Americans in the 1980s. And did a vision quest and came up with an album called Shaman Journey, which is the first of 3 albums in my Shamanic Trilogy. Shaman Journey reflected a lot of the Native American mythology, but also Hawaiian. I worked with Charmaine Lokana Kela Kali Paka to create a piece of music that honors the Hawaiian pantheon as well. And that's on the first album, Shaman Journey. From there, I traveled to Ireland and started to look into the Celtic mysticism and developed an album called Blissful Magic, Spiral of the Celtic Mysteries, which is a earth-centered Wiccan rite also. And then finally the concluding album is Voice of the Ancestors. And that's now each of these albums has a goddess illustration, and Shaman Journey would be the mother god Apele in her mother form, and then in Blissful Magic it would be Bridget in her maiden form, and now the crone goddess for Voice of the Ancestors is represented in the artwork of Susan Seton Boulay.
Beautiful artwork on that. And now tell me about, let's go into the Celtic, which is also fascinating me. I had my first trip to Ireland, I'm trying to think when that was. That was 2.5 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, and I've always felt a deep connection to Celtic music. And there was a Saint Bridget who was an amazing woman, quite groundbreaking woman who started her own nunnery, and she kind of bridged the Celtic to the Christian, right, background. But you decided to go where, Stonehenge first, and did you spend time there, and then you went to Wales as well? Tell me about that particular journey in some more details.
Great. Let's see. Saint Bridget was adopted from the Celtic goddess Bridget, and
right.
So that the way that archetype evolved was, like many do, was from Celtic goddess to Christian saint, and each of them also are reflective of historical people as well that lived their lives in this particular manner. But backing up, I wanted to actually investigate the pre-Christian roots of my Celtic background, and so I hang out with the neo-pagans really in California, and then that brought me to connections in Ireland and Wales and England.
Did you get a chance to communicate and talk to some of the Celtic, the Druids there?
Yes. I worked with a priestess of Bridget and a lot of the neo-pagan community there, and in some cases they took me out to some of the sacred sites, the sacred circles, and I did a lot of visioning there and questing there, and that provided the raw material for me to then conjure this album.
Tell me about the visioning that you do there and how you do that, because you're visiting and you're learning as you vision. and you're open. You have to be in that beginner state of mind for receiving. But then again, a lot of interesting roots that you have kind of go there too. So how do you approach doing a journey, a shamanic journey, to experience the highest that you can?
I think it's an experience that's shared across many traditions, and if we're embarking upon a journey as a spiritual seeker, and we're approaching a sacred space that may have its own particular energies or revelations, I think it's important to go with as an empty cup and just to experience the energy of the land, water, and air itself, but also the people who may act as guardians of that in a particular, and just in a particular case, and just to be open to any messages that you receive from them or in any meditation or praying that you're doing within that location.
Where did you go in? Did you go to Stonehenge? You did go to Stonehenge while you were
Yeah, I made arrangements to spend the evening in there after the visitors, the tourists, had gone.
Was that hard to do?
It wasn't. English Heritage controls the site, and I just explained simply that I was there. I wanted to do some meditation and praying in the circle and create a work of art out of it, and they were very open to that.
I
at least
had
at
no
that time.
idea you could do that. I don't think most people know that you could do that.
Hmm.
And you were able to go at night and spend the night there?
Yes.
What was that like?
Well, I remember there's these spiral circles on the monoliths, and I remember being able to just touch them and to sort of trace my hand around it, and I think in the depths of meditation, regardless of the purpose, I think if you sort of lose the whole verbal conversation in your head, I think that's when you're really connecting with the energy.
So knowing that you're doing this special connection with the energy, but also knowing you want to translate it back into music, do you take notes, or how do you remember? Because spirit's a very ethereal thing, and you're in a very different energy field when you're there. A sacred spot. It's a power spot. So how do you take that amazing experience and then translate that and remember that and make that into a piece of music?
This was before smartphones or any of that, and really back then we just had email, etc. And you didn't really carry a phone with you at that time. And I just tried to accept the energy and the inspiration into the marrow of my bone, really.
Mm-hmm. Absorb it.
Yeah, and leave it at that.
Do you feel that? I mean, I almost feel almost every single trip I take that there is a change. Sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's big. But do you feel different when you come back from some of these special trips to special places?
Yeah, it's very personal. It's very transformative. Yeah, I think in a way, moment to moment, I'm changed and transformed. Sometimes there's peak moments of transformation, and sometimes it's more subtle and day to day.
Well, you were really affected by your vision quest that happened in the 80s that you happened, and
that was very profound. That was a set ritual with hiking up to a mountain overlooking the Taos Pueblo, building a medicine wheel, spending the night there, fasting, then going and doing a sweat lodge afterwards with my teachers. And the vision was, take your music and transform it into a power of creation for healing for the planet. And that was it. So I kind of shifted away from my more commercial interests in music and put it into this new age genre. Mm-hmm. And that set me on this path spiritually and musically.
And you've been able to do now, is it 3 CDs or 4 CDs?
3.
3 CDs. Are you on a particular label, or are you doing it as an independent?
Deep Space Music is my label. I'm very proud to kind of keep basically the creative and commercial control in my own realm.
It is different, isn't
I
it?
like being an independent artist.
It's very difficult, though, sometimes doing all the promotion. When you're doing a creative piece that is of spirit here, is that hard to translate in? And it's a collaboration, and you have people, from Vietnam, and where else that you had him on the last album?
Well, there's Wouter Kellerman.
Wouter from South Africa, yeah.
Bass flute, alto flute, and silver flute. And then Phuong, that's a very interesting story. She is regarded as the finest Vietnamese musician. She plays the dan bao, which is a single-string instrument, and a dan tran, which is a multiple-string instrument, kind of like a zither.
Mm-hmm. How did you find her?
This is a great question. I think you'll love this story. I was working on the album. I had fallen in love with this instrument many years ago, and I called up Ron Korb in Canada, and I said, Ron, he just had this wonderful album called Asia Beauty, and he was just a spectacular production with Asian instruments. And I said, where can I find a dan bao player? And he says, well, you should call Tri Nguyen in Paris. So I contacted Tri Nguyen in Paris. I said, Ron said that you would know where I could get a dan bao player. He goes, oh, you should use Phuong in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. And I thought, wow, that sounds so familiar. I said, that was the name of the musician who played at my wedding reception in 2004 when I married my wife in Saigon. And I said, do you suppose it's the same one? And sure enough, it was.
Oh, my gosh, that's amazing.
So we
Full circle.
So we contacted Phuong. My wife is an interpreter of Vietnamese and English, so we contacted her and we set up a session. Now we recorded in Los Angeles. She recorded in Ho Chi Minh City, but we monitored the session in Los Angeles. And so we had the session on Saturday night at 5 o'clock, which was 8 o'clock in the Sunday morning in Ho Chi Minh City. So we were able to monitor her recording as it was.
Did you do it? What medium? Facebook Live, or did you Skype it? Or
well, my brilliant engineer Steve Shepard set that up, and we used a combination of these various video interfaces, and would send the files via email and then lock them in and then play them back. So in some cases there was a time delay of a couple of minutes before we could communicate completely.
How nice, though, how be able to do that. And then so you had this beautiful work, and I love that you found this very inspirational artist for the CD cover. It was just a beautiful work of art. Was it an existing work of art that was put on that?
Well, Susan Seddon-Boulay has passed away, and I originally had approached her to do the illustration for Shaman Journey, but she said that she was just entering treatment for breast cancer, and that she couldn't accept any more commissions. So I accepted that as it was. And then Angela Wernicke, who developed the medicine deck, the medicine cards, she ended up doing the illustration for Shaman Journey and Blissful Magic. And then when I asked her if she would do Voice of the Ancestors, she said, no, I'm retired from that. I'm not doing it. But I ended up having a conversation with Lisa Downing, and she had licensed a work from Susan Seddon-Boulay's estate for her brilliant album, and so she helped me to put me in contact with Susan Seddon-Boulay's son, Christopher.
Wow, amazing.
And so I licensed the work.
Wow.
And so for me, it's like she is able to add her voice, her ancestral voice to the project.
And it's a beautiful piece.
Yeah.
So here we are, and you've had quite an interesting journey through each release you've done. And again, for people, what's the best website to find you at? www.deepspacedisc.com. Let me repeat that. Deepspacedisc.com. That's www.deepspacedisc.com. And you can find your music on all the outlets, Amazon, and do you have probably a Spotify?
It's on all the streaming platforms, and I love CD Baby, especially. I love people who really still collect CDs. Is really amazing. Well, and congratulations on your new release.
Well, thank you. It's called The Gift of Hope. I have to show people here. It might be on Facebook. We actually still in this studio have old albums. I've been in radio that long, folks, and a lot of CDs. We had thousands and thousands of albums. When I started in radio ages ago, Bobby Applegate was watching. He'd remember those days.
I enjoyed listening to peace, music, and poems on the way over.
Thank you.
As well as Ave Maria. I want that Ave Maria.
Yeah.
Queen of Angels. And
well, it's been, you know what, my intention's the same as yours. That's why I can relate to you. I mean, I am given things, and I know I have to share them. So I write every morning. I get up at 4, and I write every morning. And out of all those things, then I ask what should be made the next project. And there's been a lot going on in the world, and this last year I was told that there really is a need for hope. That a lot of people, there's been too many suicides. There's been too many people depressed and giving up hope. And I don't think you ever should give up hope. So that was why I did this one, So yeah. And
tell us the name of your new album.
The Gift of Hope, but I'm also producing a new one with good friends of mine, Tom Vendetti, Keola Beamer, who's a wonderful Hawaiian musician, and Paul Horn, who's passed away. And Tom did an interview with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and now we've made those into pieces, and that's going to also be submitted. It was all recorded in the Himalayan mountains, and except for His Holiness was done in Dharamsala. So that's called Himalayan Sessions. So that will also be out within a couple weeks as well. So I've never done 2 projects so quickly in 1 year, and it's interesting.
So you'll include some recordings of Paul Horn on this new album?
Last recordings of Paul Horn are that Tom Vendetti was very good friends with Paul Horn. In fact, I went with Paul and Tom to Tibet in 1997, and then Paul and Tom went back to Mount Kailash. And also Christopher Hedge, who owns the Magic studio in the Bay Area, recorded Paul Horn. And these are the very last recordings of Paul Horn that will be on this the Himalayan
That's so
Sessions.
Fantastic. And as you may know, Paul performed on Shaman Journey, my first album.
I didn't know that. See, it comes full circle. Isn't that amazing? I mean, you can make this stuff up, folks. I had no idea.
Yes, Paul Horn is the featured flute player on Shaman Journey.
Well, bless his soul. I mean, that's just amazing.
So I'm just really awestruck by the synchronicity that you're producing a work that includes his last recordings. Yeah. That's just astounding.
I got to finish it up because of time, but I do really thank you for coming in, and I really look forward to hearing more of what you're doing. I love your work, and a big aloha.
Aloha.